only good things about that place, literally. Okay, I guess we can get started. Um, Sorry, I muted everyone, so just a reminder to unmute yourself, Amy. Okay. So I'm like super excited for the speaker we have today, Amy Davis. Amy began her vegan journey in 2002, and she founded LA Animal Save in 2016 and organizes vigils outside of slaughterhouses like Farmer John's. LA Animal Safe has grown into one of the largest chapters in the Save movement. So after the interview, you guys could ask any of your lingering questions. So if you have any questions throughout the interview, just wait until the end. So starting with the first question, the most basic question, Amy, how did you become vegan and ultimately an animal rights activist?
Well, when I was a little kid, I loved animals, which I think is something we all do when we're little. But I was also very interested in nutrition, oddly enough, and those two things stayed very strong in my life as I got older. So my junior year of college was the first year I lived off campus and had my own little place, my own little apartment. So I thought this would be a good time for me to go vegetarian. And so I made that choice. And then about a month later, this is at Purdue University, I saw a woman on campus with a little TV, this little tiny TV, and she was playing slaughter footage. So I went over to her and naturally I was very interested in what she was doing. And she handed me a booklet from the vegan outreach organization called Why Vegan. And in that moment, reading that pamphlet, it was the first time that I learned that a dairy cow, a dairy mother, is impregnated and has to give birth before she actually begins lactating. See, I thought that cows just made milk, like apple trees make apples. And it's crazy because we're allowed to think this even through biology class in school, because no one from the dairy or the meat industry wants us to think about the fact that these babies are taken from their mothers and slaughtered. And so I felt in that moment, I just felt incredibly stupid. Like, how could I have gone my whole, educational life and miss this very basic biological fact? Cows are not special, magical mammals that just make milk without there being a pregnancy involved. And that was also when I learned about male chicks being ground up alive in the egg industry. So that was my moment where I thought, okay, if I'm making these diet choices for any reason for the animals, I need to cut out dairy and eggs also, because they're actually worse than meat. So that was the beginning in 2002 during college. And so for about 10 years, 10 long years, I was what you would call a personal choice vegan, where I thought that it was just a personal choice what food people ate. And I didn't really understand that animals are individuals who also have certain rights, the right to live not as property of anyone, and the right to live free of harm, at least free of human harm. I didn't get that. I really didn't get it. And so for 10 years, I was a personal choice vegan, and I didn't really talk about veganism very much. And it wasn't until I learned with absolute certainty that not only do we not need to eat animals in any way to be healthy, but we're actually less healthy when we do eat animals. And then I thought, well, then why does anybody eat them? It just made no sense to me. Like, I used to think that maybe one day I was going to realize that I needed something from animal products in order to be healthy. I mean, that's so ridiculous. And so once I understood that, then that's when I started speaking up for animals. And then it was a couple years later in 2015 when Toronto Pig Save reached out to me on Twitter and asked if I would come to a pig vigil. And at the time, I had no idea what that was. But they said, we see that you've been on American Idol. We want to know if you would let us fly you to Toronto. We'd put you up in a hotel and we'd bring you to our pig vigil to bear witness to the pigs. And maybe some media outlets would come to the vigil too, since you have the American Idol credential. So I was like, well, of course, yes. So so I went to Toronto, really not understanding what it was I was doing. And I still remember that moment when I first saw the pigs inside the transport trucks. And that moment was the moment that really solidified my new personhood in the activism world. I knew that this is something that I needed to be doing.
Right. And I just want to emphasize that like you're not dumb for thinking that way, because I used to think, I'm like, what's like a cow's purpose then if it's not to produce milk? So it's like they teach us this mentality from a young age. It's not until you do further research you're like, no, these are mothers. So
Right.
this perfectly leads me to the next question. So what led you to find the LA Animal Save movement, and can you tell us more about the movement?
So when I was in Toronto with Toronto Pig Save and bearing witness to the pigs and the cows and the chickens, they asked if I would start a group in LA, because that's part of what Animal Save movement wants. We want a group everywhere in the world where there's some place of violence, whether it's a slaughterhouse, a live market, a farm. And so they asked if I would start a group in LA. At that time, I wasn't ready to be an organizer. I felt like I was really just coming into the world as an activist, other than what I was posting on social media, which, you know, happened to see me lose like family members and friends, all sort of scattered when I started posting heavily on social media. But to be an in-person activist was something still quite new to me at that time. So being an organizer was scary. So I said no. And then about a year later, I helped organize a vigil in LA. It was right after the Animal Rights Conference that year in 2016. So with Anita and some other activists, we did vigils here in LA, and I helped as an organizer. But yet I still wasn't ready. I still wasn't ready to do it all on my own. But then a couple months later, there were some problems, and the team called me up again and said, "Are you sure you don't want to do the LA group?" And they're like, "We really need some help." And so I said yes. I was terrified, so scared that I was not going to do it well and was going to mess up, and afraid of so many things. But I remember that very first vigil that I organized for LA Animal Save. I remember just pulling up. I was with Sean. We pull up to unload some of the equipment, the water jugs and all of that. And I saw all these people there. And immediately I was like, yes, this is exactly where I need to be. And I should have done this back in September of 2015, as soon as I got back from Toronto. And so I really felt good about being an organizer. It felt right. But here in LA, it's actually quite easy because there are so many activists here, and they are just ready, and they want to get out there to speak up for the animals. And so just make an event and they will come, right? So it does make my job a lot easier as an organizer, and less scary, having, you know, just knowing that people will show up. And so then a little bit more about Animal Save movement. It started with Toronto Pig Save, and it grew a lot one year that Anita Kreintz, the co-founder, was actually arrested for giving water to pigs. She was initially looking at 10 years in prison for what they called criminal mischief. And so that trial went on for 2 years. I think that the meat industry was hoping that this would scare activists away from bearing witness and from giving water and showing up at slaughterhouses. But in fact, it just did the opposite. And it exploded Animal Save movement all over the globe. And to date, we have around 1,000 groups. We also have newer branches. We have Animal Save movement, where our focus is bearing witness at vigils. And then we have Climate Save movement and Youth Climate Save movement, where the events that we do are more geared to educate the public on how animal agriculture destroys the planet. And then we also have Health Save movement, where we are teaching people how a whole foods plant-based diet can keep you healthy and keep your chances of dying of all these diet caused diseases much lower than your average, you know, person. So we come at the problem that is animal agriculture from all of these different angles. only because animal agriculture causes so many different problems. Um, and we take a love-based approach, and we do grassroots organizing, and we have independent groups all over the world who know their area, know the laws in their area, they know the people and the best way to speak out to the people in their area. And so that's what we've been doing since it started in late 2010 overall.
So probably as you bear witness, I don't know if you've gotten this question a lot, but I have. But a lot of people ask me, why is bearing witness important? Like you're watching them go to slaughter. So like, don't you feel helpless in that situation? So ultimately, why is bearing witness to non-human animals important before slaughter?
I get that question a lot too. People will ask me, like, what's wrong with you? Like, why would you put yourself through that? It's not about us. It's about them. And if we were switched places, if we were all in a truck and we were moments away from our deaths, and we overheard some people going, oh, well, then they're not worth showing up for. They're almost going to be dead. So why do it? It's just going to be sad for me. Like, that would not make us feel good if we heard that. They are every bit worth going down there and seeing them in those final moments, to recognize them not as a commodity, not as property, but as individuals who are trapped in this violent system. And we show up and we say, I see you and I'm speaking up for you. I'm going to share your story with the world. And this is the least that I can do. And so for me, it's an obligation for people to bear witness. We have to, because otherwise the whole conversation can be quite abstract. Animals are being hurt. Oh, that's terrible. Come and see these animals right in front of your eyes. See their pain. Smell their pain. The blood, the vomit, the feces, the urine. Come and see them and see how much misery that they're in. And at the very least, what you can do is show them to the world, because we have something called social media where we can reach everybody out there who has access to a phone or the internet in some capacity. So we can reach more people this way, and we can say, you're an individual and you're worth bearing witness to, you're worth seeing in those final moments. Otherwise, I think we can get detached from who the animals are, the real victims here. I mean, there's a lot of victims. There's lots of human victims as well. Of course, there's the planet who's a victim as well. But by bearing witness, it reminds you who we are fighting for, who we're speaking up for. And so I think it's very important, because that feeling of helplessness that people are worried of feeling if they come to a vigil is actually, for many people, a catalyst, a really strong catalyst for changing them, inspiring them. You walk away from a vigil knowing that you did the right thing, that you showed up for these animals and you looked at them and you said, I'm doing everything I can. And it can change a person and catalyze them into being more active for the animals in whatever way. You don't necessarily walk away from a vigil wanting to start as an animal save group wherever you're from. You might go, you know what? I have always wanted to start an Instagram account with vegan recipes and beautiful photos of food and little video tutorials. And I am going to do it because that's my strength. And these animals have inspired me that I need to be out there speaking up in a way that I can. And so that might be vegan recipes. There's a lot of different ways to be an activist. And by bearing witness, it really can make it more clear for you what your role is specifically in this overall social justice movement.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking from my own experience, like looking at it on your screen and going in person, like makes all the difference. Like after I went in person, I was like, there's no way I'll ever eat meat again. And that like led me to be like, what more can I do for these animals? So like I always encourage people like you need to come, like it'll change your like life
Exactly.
in the best way
Exactly.
possible. Yeah. So how did the LA Animal Save grow to become one of the largest chapters? I know you attract like a lot of celebrities like Walking Phoenix, Kip Anderson. So how did it grow to that magnitude?
Well, again, I am lucky for a couple of reasons, a lot of reasons. It's LA, so there's already, this is, Hollywood, this is celebrity central. But with Sean Monson, the filmmaker behind Earthlings and Unity, and he knows a lot of these celebrities because he's worked with them. And so he is the one who helped me get these celebrities to come down. And, at first, some of them don't want to. And this goes back to our conversation we just had. Oh, I'm already vegan. And why would I come down there? It's so sad. It's traumatizing. But Sean still manages to get them to come down. And then they realize it's important to be there. It's important that you can say that you took your physical body and you took yourself down there and you stood in that very, very dark place and brought your light there and stood there and said, this is wrong. This is not okay. This must change. So Sean's the one who's been able to convince a lot of the celebrities to come down and do that. So again, not really my doing. I've just been lucky.
I definitely think you had a major part. Give yourself more credit.
Thank you.
So, I used to do this before too, but like I used to only focus on the animals, like non-human animals. I didn't really focus on like the slaughterhouse workers because I just had this idea like, no, they're bad people, but like that's not the case. So can we center like put more focus on non-human on sorry on humans in our activism?
This is an important point because another way that animal ag tries to put the blame off of them onto others, they will do that with the workers. I'm sure they love when vegans or even non-vegans are just, those people are evil. How dare they? How could they have that job? And somebody who says that is truly clueless to the system that these human beings are a victim of. These corporations, these factory farms, they focus on finding the most vulnerable and marginalized communities to bring in to do these jobs. Nobody wants to do these jobs. Nobody wants to do them, right? And so, and I used to go into high schools with another group to give presentations about plant-based eating. And I asked those kids, how many of you are going to grow up to be a slaughterhouse worker or a factory farm worker? And none of them raised their hands. And none of them will probably ever find themselves in that position. It's people who have no other choice for a lot of different reasons. And so these people are preyed upon as well. They are not the villains here. I mean, there's literally human trafficking, documented human trafficking incidences from factory farms and slaughterhouses where they've literally taken passports away from people after promising a better job in America and say, okay, now you have to work off this debt. It's a vile industry, and not just because they're murdering and dismembering animals. They're targeting people as well. And these people, they, around 78% of the workforce in America in this industry are immigrants, a lot of them being illegal, which means if they get hurt in this extremely dangerous job, now what? They don't speak up. They work through the injury. They're not going to speak up and try and get medical care because they need the job. So I think that the way that we can bring humans into the focus here as well in this overall problem within the animal rights movement is just understanding the whole system, understanding everything that animal agriculture is committing, everything that they're doing, and knowing who all the victims are besides the animals, besides the environment. There are a lot of human victims in this system, and the people that have the power to change it are the consumers. Right? We have to say, I will not support this industry. I will not support the murder against the animals. I will not support the violence against and the oppression against the human workers. And of course, the destruction of the environment. I will not participate in this. And we have a lot of power, each individual person, and we must use it. This isn't a situation where, we're out in the public asking the public to care about something that doesn't really apply to them. Everybody has to eat. And we have almost 1 billion of humans on this planet who don't get to eat. And that's largely because they are poor people, and animal ag does not care about poor people. They're going to use those people's land space wherever they live to grow the feed crops and to graze the animals. And all those animals are going to be eaten by Westerners, right? So we're talking about people that are poor and have nothing, not in America, I'm talking about all over the world. These people, 1 billion human beings, are not eating every day, but somehow we raise enough plants to feed over 70 billion animals. I mean, a cow eats 30 pounds of food a day. I mean, the calculations are maddening, that we already grow more than enough food to feed everyone. But because there are so many people who will not stop eating animals, that food goes to animals while, 900 million humans starve. So to get back to the answer of your question, we need to realize that it's not just about the animals, it's about humans very much so as well. And oppression is oppression, and oppression is wrong. And so if we understand it, we can speak to it, we can educate people. And when you're talking with pre-vegans, you really may not know what they care about. They care about something. So our challenge is find out what they care about. And by knowing all the different ways animal agriculture is annihilating the world, we might actually find something that they care about, and they didn't know that by choosing animals on their plate instead of plants, they're contributing to this issue that's very important to them, like world hunger or species extinction or ocean dead zones or climate change in general. So by knowing and understanding the whole system that is animal ag and everything that it ruins, we can find more opportunities to speak about humans as well, if that comes up. And we should, because all life deserves to live unoppressed, and animal ag is oppressing, it's a giant oppression monster that we're fighting.
Right. Would you, how do I put this? Because I've had like the opportunity to talk to like slaughterhouse workers, hunters, and I'm like, there's always like, okay, be compassionate, be kind, but like once I see them or like once I approach them, I'm like, what do I say? What can I say to like for you to be more open-minded, like to join this movement? Because they also like some of them might see us as the enemy, like they're trying to put us out of business. So like what would you say in that situation? Like how do you approach those workers? Like if you have like if like situation like that ever comes up, because I've been in those situations and I'm like, oh my goodness, what do I say to like for them to listen to me?
It's a hard question. And it's because we are fighting against the most skilled level of programming that I've seen in my life. People are programmed from the very beginning that they need to eat animals, or that we have the right to kill when we want to, or that the animals don't feel any pain. There's all of this programming that's going on, and we just need to be aware of that. And instead of finding ourselves getting frustrated that the person isn't listening to the truth coming out of our mouths, we have to get curious about them in the conversation again and try and find, what is it that they do care about? What is something that hasn't been tarnished by some sort of corporate programming and propaganda or cultural or traditional kind of programming? We try to get curious about them and learn about what they do care about, and then you can relate it to something. And we may not always know the right thing to say, but it's important that we understand the issues, because we never want to find ourselves diluting the message. We never want to find ourselves saying, well, it's okay to take baby steps. We can praise, good moves. We can say it's really great that you have cut out dairy. That is fantastic. And we can, applaud them for that, without saying it's okay that they still eat flesh. So it's about learning effective ways of communicating. There's lots of different ways to communicate, of course, and there's serious intricacies there that can unconsciously we're doing this even though we're really just totally on board to want to have a back and forth, but we're doing this because we just don't know any better. And there's all kinds of things we can learn about communication to avoid that. It's a complex topic, but being curious about a person might actually lead you to really hear some of that common ground where they can feel, instead of you coming at them with a message that they're not ready to hear, that society has told them is the wrong message because you're a weirdo or you're extreme or you're radical, and instead find a way to agree with people so that you're less threatening. Because truth to a group of people who are collectively truth deniers feels like an attack. It feels unsafe. It feels like you're trying to deceive us or get us in some way, to drink the Kool-Aid. So the more that we can find in conversation things that we agree on, I think opens up the possibility that they'd be willing to open their ear a little bit to our message. It's a very, very delicate and difficult thing to do. And it gets easier with a little bit more practice. And there's a lot of activists out there who talk about how to talk to people and who talk about the psychology of being programmed and how to get through that programming. Dr. Melanie Joy is one that comes to mind. And so we can learn from them also. But maybe when we view the people as how can I learn about this person and what they do care about? Where can I find where they do have some integrity, like towards a cause of some kind? For example, basically everybody you talk to in some way cares about some animal, whether it's their dog or whatever, and that they would protect that animal. And then you can tell them, yeah, that's awesome. I feel the same way, or I have the same view. And in fact, I've learned that pigs are no different from dogs. And so they, in fact, would feel the same way in the situation. They'd feel fear if they were being, attacked or killed or abused. And they would feel connection and closeness if they were being kind to. And so those are the kinds of ways where you can sort of take what they do care about and explain to them how it might apply with other animals they've been told don't actually feel that way.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I think of myself as a compassionate person, like towards like non-human animals, but like it's not the same towards like humans. I'm like, I need to practice that because like I resort to like aggression right away. I'm like, no, like step back. And I think that's a good approach, like being curious about the person, literally wanting to learn more, like genuinely.
Mm-hmm.
I like that approach. Hopefully, I could utilize that because I need to work on it for sure.
It's really hard. It's really hard. Like you just, especially when you're listening to a hunter saying that what they're doing is actually helping the populations. And so it's good to know that, in fact, the only reason that they have to go out and kill these overpopulated deer is because the cattle industry has killed off all of the predator animals. And so the imbalance is there because of animal products. And if we stopped doing that, we could give the land back and allow those predators to come back and maintain themselves. And we don't have to go out there and be a part of that violence. It's so hard. It's sometimes you just have to bite your teeth and
Literally.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't know that. That's really interesting. It's actually funny because you said before drink the Kool-Aid, and actually me and Celeste, she's here right now, we were at a SeaWorld, we were conducting a SeaWorld protest, and this like lady passes by and she's like, "You guys are drinking the Kool-Aid." I was
Yep.
like, "Come back here now. I want to talk to you." But
Yeah, I just thought of that.
yeah, I'm like, no, we're not the ones who are, but it just made me think of that moment. Okay, so this leads me perfectly to the next question. So, what do you think are like, I feel like you literally touched on this. What do you think are the most effective techniques to join like this like our movement, Stop the Slaughter, and build campaign momentum, because like right now we want like all dining halls to switch to 100% plant-based, and like a lot of people, non-vegans, are gonna be like, what are you doing? Like it's like an attack on them. So we're like, we want more people to join this movement, but obviously like any animal rights movement we condone. So we just want to find more methods. Like what would you recommend?
Well, you know your age group best. You also know the culture of whatever, your college. You know what other social justice movements are active at your college, and if you can find some common ground with them, it can be good to try to join forces. It can be good to say, hey, we totally believe in what you're fighting for, and we want that too, and we see a correlation here, and maybe we can have a meeting, or maybe we could come and present at one of your meetings to show you how there's common ground. Like, for example, um, with Black Lives Matter, the targeting of people of color by the fast food industry, and the food apartheid that goes on. Some people call it food deserts. You can go in there and talk about how people of color are targeted by these industries, and that they're more sick, and they have less access to healthcare due to basically every system in America having a racism problem. And so you might be able to give a presentation there to show them how this is an additional a bunch of layers of oppression and racism towards people of color. And we want you to know that we are fighting against this because we see it and we know that it's wrong. So there might be ways to collaborate in those areas with other groups. So that's one thing you can do. I think that you and the other people in your group, you all can talk about what are your strengths. Do you really feel good perhaps going on campus and handing out leaflets and trying to have conversations with people walking by? Would you feel great and strong about doing some sort of at Animal Save Movement, we call them save squares, where we stand with our computers or tablets and show footage in like a square, and then people walking by stop and go, oh, what are you showing? And then you can talk to them that way. There's all these different methods of activism, and in your group you guys can talk and say, what do we feel or think is our strength? What are we good at? What do we feel comfortable doing? Because I can tell you, not every type of activism is good for everyone, but there's activisms that are good for certain people. I don't love to do a more loud chanty type of protest. That kind of energy gets my adrenaline pumping, and I don't like how I feel. But at vigils, despite how sad that they can be, I feel very good there, because I feel like I can hold that space and keep it safe for the people that are coming to see the animals. So there's my strength, right? So talk about what your strengths are, and don't try to do anything that just doesn't really resonate, because you'll find that you're more attractive energetically when you're doing something that really resonates with you. People can come by and go, oh yeah, these people are confident, they know what they're talking about, they seem totally comfortable and approachable, and it can be just a smoother process that way, and perhaps catch more eyes or ears in that way. So I'm not going to say anything negative about any style of activism, because I believe that they're all necessary as we're all working collectively towards liberation. But it's okay if there's a type of activism that isn't for you. If you don't like to talk to people, don't talk to people. Find the kind that really resonates with you, and you feel confident about doing, and don't try anything else. Just stick with that and see if you can find, as a group, what you all think you're most effective at.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, I feel like all of our strengths could come into play and create like such bigger change, rather than being like, oh, let's do all of these things, like things that we may not be as good. Like, for example, me, like I'm always like in the past, well, I used to not like to talk to people. So I was like, I can't talk. I'm such a shy person. But now like I talk to people, I'm like, wow, that was my strength. Like, so it's like just whatever works, but like um there's certain things that just don't work well with me. So I feel like that's great, like advice to find your strength and like utilize that.
Mhm.
So this is the final question, just because I saw it yesterday. So, can you tell me more about the Indigo film with Joaquin Phoenix that just came out yesterday?
Yeah, so um, a year ago, the slaughterhouse owner that we go and do our cow vigils at called me and said, a baby was born in the holding pen. Do you want to come get her? And I was like, yes, let me call you back. And this was the day after the Oscars. And if you were watching or heard about it, Joaquin gave an amazing speech when he accepted his Best Actor award, talking about literally talking about the dairy industry. Um, and so I asked Sean, I said, do you think Walk would want to come with us when we go pick up this mother and baby? Because we've done this before. The owner of the slaughterhouse has called us before to do this. And he's like, I don't know, he just won an Oscar, so I don't really know what he'd be up for, and I thought, oh gosh, yeah, maybe we shouldn't ask him because he just won an Oscar. What do you do? I've never known somebody who won an Oscar and how you're supposed to interact with them the next day. But I sent him a message anyway and let him know, and he was an immediate yes. So we went there and we managed to get this mother and baby out, and Sean filmed all of that as well in the first film, and that film's called Liberty, and we released that movie last year. And so now this is basically a 1-year follow-up on Liberty and Indigo at Farm Sanctuary with Joaquin and his sisters. So we went down there and got to hang out with the cows and film Joaquin and his sisters, and his one sister Liberty is who Liberty and Indigo are named after, and so she actually got to be there and meet Liberty, got to meet Liberty. And it was a beautiful thing, and I was there. I really can't do anything because I'm always taking care of our baby Phoenix, and but I wanted to be in there with everybody while they were filming and be around the cows. But at first they were saying, we're worried that we have this one cow who's younger and he's a little bit rambunctious, and so we're worried about your baby getting hurt. So I had to stand at the gate, and I wasn't able to go in with everybody. And at one point Joaquin noticed, and he was like, Amy, why isn't Amy and Phoenix in here? And so he came over and he was like, he managed to get us in, and we got to go in and pet the cows. And there's a little clip of us in there petting Saffron. It was really fun. And so this 1-year follow-up was a chance to, again, make a film with Joaquin, which hopefully will get seen a lot like Liberty did, and also talk about how animal agriculture affects the environment, since it was Earth Day yesterday. So that was the goal with this film, was to try and get some eyes and ears to the truth behind a powerful thing we can do for the earth, and that's eating a plant-based diet. And so it came out yesterday. It's all over. It's on different channels on YouTube and Instagram. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend it. It's a very beautiful piece. There's footage, of course, of all of us at Farm Sanctuary with the cows, but also Sean interviewed Joaquin for quite a long time, and so you get to hear Joaquin talk more about his experience with the rescue last year, and seeing Liberty and Indigo still together a year later, and getting to be mother and daughter and live as they should. So it's a very beautiful, just a wonderful film. It's about 14 minutes.
Imagine being on texting terms with Joaquin Phoenix. Sorry, I had to just add that. But that's cool that like that farmer or whatever called you. Like you must have been on really good terms with him. I remember seeing like a conversation between him and the Joaquin and the farmer where Joaquin's they were just arguing, not arguing, but just about like different word usages about um,
Murder and
yeah, murder,
harvest.
yeah. Harvest and murder. Sorry, I couldn't think of it, but I was like, yeah, go Joaquin.
Yeah,
His ground.
he doesn't let up on the truth there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so part of the reason why we have that kind of relationship with the slaughterhouse owner is because we are looking for that common ground, trying to have those conversations, hoping that they'll come to make that connection with the animals and the planet, and change the business. And it's a big ask to get a slaughterhouse owner to stop slaughtering animals, but we do believe that that will start happening very soon. And as people start to evolve and see the consciousness all around them instead of seeing property and commodities, and as there is more push from consumers to say, nope, I'm only buying plant-based products. And as the market explodes in the plant-based foods industry, the meat and dairy industry is actually going to be collapsing in this next decade, just complete collapse. So we're also there to try to warn them. Your future livelihood is at stake here. So if you have any financial interest in your future, you will switch from animal products to plant products. And it's available to all of those companies. And even legislation is starting to be proposed to help farmers switch from animal farms to some sort of plant-based agriculture. So we're trying to help them also, because they're humans too, and they may have just grown up in this industry and they're programmed to think that this is what they're doing for the planet and this is what is right. And we're here to say, we understand that you think that, however, this is the better way. But that's because of the love-based method that Animal Save Movement has, that we've been able to encourage the dialogue with the owner, and he's allowed us to come and take some cows.
No, that's really awesome. I hopefully I get to that stage one day. Goals, literally. I guess, oh man, I talked a lot. Sorry about that, guys. Thank you for answering all the questions and for being here. You had great things to say, and that have resonated with all of us for sure. Does anyone have any questions? I have questions, but I've been asking all the questions. So
yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody if there was anything that I didn't touch on.
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Well, when I talked to my sister and her husband about plant-based eating, well, like my brother-in-law, he's a 6 foot, man, and he's trim and everything, but he feels he has to have protein from his chicken or his fish. He just cannot. He's very hardworking, and he just feels he's 70 now. Anyway, he feels he has to have it, and he says, I eat everything, which he does, but he eats really healthy too, as far as vegetables and fruits and all of that. But it's really hard for me to know how I can have a conversation with him when he has his mind made up. That's the way he's going to eat. That's the way he's always eaten. So I was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, have you suggested for any of the documentaries, for him to watch any of the documentaries, such as, a great one for him, thinking that he's this 6 foot tall, strong guy, is Game Changers? Has he been open to watching anything like that?
Well, the problem with that is he doesn't have any time, because him and my sister, they have an adult child who's special needs, and they're responsible to take care of him, and it's a lot of responsibility, and so they'll never have time for any of that. So they'll pick up a rotisserie chicken on a regular basis and things like that. But they grow vegetables now, and they have a garden, and they have somebody help them keep the garden going and things like that. But he doesn't have time to watch documentaries. Neither does my sister.
So the problem that they're at high risk of running into is some sort of cardiac event or stroke. And then they're going to have a lot of time to watch documentaries, because they aren't going to be able to, even take care of their kid. Potentially, they're going to need more help depending on how serious, the event is, and so if there's a way for you to explain to them the level of risk that they're at their age, and just statistically speaking, and to let them know that they can't, if they're taking in cholesterol and saturated fat and animal protein, they're at high risk for these things. And they can't.
Well, my sister, she always says they go to their annuals and they get their blood panels, and they both have excellent health according to their doctors, and they don't have cholesterol or they don't have high cholesterol or any overweight or at least my brother-in-law doesn't.
So the spectrum that they're being compared to from the doctor is a spectrum where essentially everybody, especially at 70, everybody has heart disease. So it's like, well, how much heart disease do you have? Oh, your heart disease isn't that bad, so your cholesterol numbers are good. But your cholesterol numbers, unless they're under like 150, your cholesterol numbers are a risk factor for a cardiac or stroke event. But because most everybody's sick, unless they're eating a healthy plant-based diet, it's a sea of sick people. So we're no longer viewed as sick. We're viewed as, we're okay. We're doing good. And that's a hard concept to explain to people. And family, first of all, the hardest ones to convince. It's hard. It's hard if you've told them and they aren't going to look into it further. They don't believe you. They're not going to change the way they eat. Then just be prepared for the high possibility of something happening, and then hoping that will be the time when they'll listen. And even then, so many people don't. Like, I have an uncle who has congestive heart failure, won't switch his diet. Okay, so there's nothing left to do. So hopefully something that you have already said, that's a seed that plants and starts to grow, and then one day the leaf tickles them in the brain and they're like, oh wait, you know what, something Carrie said to me actually kind of makes sense, and I saw this other thing that correlates it, and so I'm going to come back to her and say, hey, what was that about? And then you'll be there. But we can't force people to watch these documentaries, to look at the science, but never stop wondering what you might be able to say or do that could get them to look. It could be the next thing you say. You never know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I think Varun has a question.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate getting to hear from you. So you emphasized a lot, like finding common ground with people that we, with the people that we want to convince, and that's a strategy that that is like really cool, and I really like the emphasis that you put on that kind of like language and communication. But I was one of the things that we were talking about actually just this morning in my school org is that common ground in kind of our school, or in like our case specifically, has often been like sustainability and the environmental arguments. But one of the things that we hope to do is maybe also begin to introduce a conversation about animal ethics. So I was wondering if and how, so if after finding common ground, if and how you might introduce a conversation about animal ethics to the people that you talk with, or do you you really focus on the common ground and make as much headway as you can in that area?
Oh, excellent question, Varun. Thank you. It's my personal preference that after exploring the common ground, that usually doesn't have to do with animal ethics, unfortunately, I always want to make sure to end with it, because there's no opinion, there's no room for opinion here. Animals are sentient, they feel pain, therefore should be protected from it. And just like we do with our dogs and our cats. And so it's something that, as lightly as you can say, because truth has a heavy hand for truth deniers, as I said before. So as gently as you can say it, not in diluting the message, but in the way you say it. Well, all animals are sentient. And so if an animal can feel pain, unnecessary pain, that we should keep them from feeling that unnecessary pain. And it's as simple as eating plants instead of animals. And so that sentience I think should always be mentioned at the very end, because it's undeniable. People don't want to hear it. People don't like to confront the fact that their worth and their value is so low that their government will lie to them from the time they're extremely young and make them think that they have to eat animals, that they have to participate in this kind of violence in order to be healthy. People don't like to confront the fact that they've been lied to in that way. But yes, the animal ethics part is vital. It's in my opinion, it's the most important, which is why when people say, oh, I'm not going to tell my friends and family to watch graphic footage. I say, that is the thing that will get through to the people who are ready to face that reality. And most importantly, then the people who are actually going to want to get active for animals. We're not out here to convince every single person in America or the world that there's this animal ethic situation. It's the sentience that's being ignored. We essentially only have to convince a smaller number of people, because the masses follow along what the minority demands. So we have to get to a certain level of the minority saying, no, plant-based now. This is the evolution, plant-based, and then everybody else follows. So that's why that ethical point is so critical. And I always believe that it should be spoken and made very clear as gently as possible at the end of the conversation.
Does anyone else have questions? Oh, sorry.
I think that the way that you can bring the conversation back is you can always ask them if they have ever loved an animal in their life, or have ever protected an animal, or did they ever come upon an injured animal, and what was their response? You will get people who say, oh, I've killed every animal I've come across, or I've hated every animal I've ever had an encounter with. But most likely you'll find people who say, oh, well, one time I saw an injured raccoon and I didn't know what to do, but I felt terrible. And then you can say, okay, that is how all animals deserve to be viewed, because they can feel pain, and all of this animal ag industry is all considered unnecessary pain. It's not necessary, and it's very destructive. And so therefore we can just not participate because it's unnecessary, when we can go to the necessary foods that are plants in some way. And you can probably think of a better way to say it.
That's funny, because I always tell people, like, you don't have to love animals to be vegan. Like, I know so many vegans, shout out to Quiz, who like, they don't really like, they don't love animals, but they think they all deserve respect. Like, that's just basic. That's the bare minimum, and that's it. Like, that should be enough for people to be like, to go vegan. But you would think people would be like, oh, you're right, and that's it. Like, they're sentient, that's it. But no, there's a lot more convincing. Are there any other questions? Guys, now's your chance.
Well, you can always send me a DM on Instagram or anything like that if you think of something later. And of course, next month you're having Sean on, right?
Yeah, I'm so excited.
So I'll be in the background somewhere while you're interviewing Sean. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody that's here. This is a really important conversation for so many reasons, for you to be aware and be active in it. You're literally the warriors protecting the planet from, well, not the planet, but humans from extinction, because once we go extinct, things will probably get back to normal pretty quickly. But you're keeping us from, our own kind of self-annihilation and making the world so much better and kinder and less violent. You are literally making that happen. Everybody else who's not on this call and also not currently doing any kind of animal rights activism, they're participating in it and they come by it honestly. big corporations with all their power and their programming, but your role is so vital. I just hope that you all know that we can look back, if we're still alive in 100 years, and see the people who actually were responsible for getting everybody to see the truth so that we can save ourselves. So thank you for your incredibly important role in making the world better.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm really happy that you came today. Like, those words will literally stick with me forever. Now I just have to follow them. But thank you. I was in need of advice and you gave it all. Cool.
Thank you for
So
having
thank
me.
you.
Thanks for reaching out and asking me to come and be here with you. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
Do you like have any like LA Animal Save resources or any like place we could donate to, or like do you have that?
Well, if you, I mean, I know you're college students, so you probably don't have a lot of money to donate, but if you had, you know, $20 or $30, I would much rather you get a shirt or a hoodie from our shop and wear it, because then you're, you know, you're taking your activism around where you don't even have to talk to people and you don't know the seeds that you're planting because people are reading your stuff. So, so I highly recommend, you know, looking at that if that's something that you're interested in doing, if you wanted to wear that kind of clothing. If you don't, I understand that too, of course, but yeah. And you know what, I can offer you a discount as well. So just message me on Instagram and let me know that you were here today and I can set you up with that discount.
Oh, wow, great. Thank you so much. How exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Again. All right.
All
Bye,
right.
guys.
Nice talking with everybody.
Y'all.